Hey Ben, thanks for joining us.
Thank you very much, Simon.
So the reason I wanted to bring you on is because there was this recent news that the Guardian, the UK newspaper, well known, just crossed a major threshold. It reached 1 million digital only subscribers, and that those are people who actually entered their credit card information, and they are agreeing to give the Guardian, some kind of monthly amount on a monthly basis and renewal, not just like a one-time, payment or anything like that. And I think it's interesting for a few reasons. One is there are actually very few outlets that have hit 1 million subscribers. I was just trying to name them off the top of my head, and I feel like there are only like 10 that actually are only digital only subscribers. Half of the reporting was that half of those subscribers from the Guardian came from outside the UK. You think of the Guardian as mainly kind of like a British newspaper, so it's kind of amazing that it has such a big brand imprint that it was able to actually generate a lot of subscribers outside of its kind of core focus. And then finally, the most amazing thing I think, and the thing that has people turning their heads, is the Guardian, unlike the New York Times, and unlike the Washington Post, unlike the Wall Street Journal, they did this all without putting any content behind a paywall. They just have messaging in their newsletters on the bottoms of their articles saying, this is important journalism that we're doing. Please become, a recurring member to support. And I think that kind of dovetails with some interesting stuff going on in the creator space and also with media, with these questions of, what motivates people to subscribe to something? Are they actually looking to, read paywalled content? Are they looking to support journalism? Are there other things you can offer besides paywall content? And this is very important, especially from a creator perspective, because we bust our asses to create a lot of content, but there's only so much we can create in a given week. And whenever we're spending a lot of time putting stuff behind a paywall, that's stuff that's not going to help us grow because obviously it can't be shared as easily. So it's just some interesting things here. So let's start with kind of the first question just kind of hearing your general thoughts. Like, do you think more publishers should think about, like, should we get rid of our paywall or should we not have a paywall at all? Like, what are your kind of feelings on this?
My overall feeling is that for the vast majority of publishers, you need a paywall. You need to charge
Mm-hmm.
for content. I would say that it's not a sustainable strategy to give your content away for free. I think in the history of publishing, nobody's really made a business without giving everything away completely for free. You even a newspaper that is ad based. You used to, I don't know, you buy the New York Times, right? They run ads, and you purchase the newspaper online. It's like you can read a free version, which is ads, but if you want most of it, there is a paywall. There's a metered paywall. Because they figured the same thing out, that basically we can't give all of this away for free. We can't run it with just advertising. Um, by going with a mission driven sort of statement, I think, yes, for certain outlets, that's going to be a good strategy. I think, for like The Guardian, for example, has a very, very loyal, almost cult like status particularly in the UK. I went to the University of Sussex, and there was a joke. The joke on campus was about Sussex students have like copies of the Guardian glued to their armpit.
Mm-hmm.
That's all they read. Their opinions come from the Guardian. They go on to write for the Guardian. Um, so if you're the Guardian, you could probably get away with that, I would say. If you are maybe a very, very popular or like a very opinionated columnist, a rare few can probably get away with that, can probably do that. But I would say for the vast majority, you want to have probably a mix, where you do the fifth, maybe a 50-50 split, or you give away slightly more than you put behind your paywall. I think you have to experiment with that. You have to vary how much you do. Or like the Wall Street Journal hard paywall does just fine. Does really, really
Yeah.
well. So my opinion is that for the vast majority of publishers, no. I think giving away your content completely for free, unless you have other very lucrative forms of lucrative revenue streams within that business. is not a great strategy, personally.
Well, certainly, like so, the Guardian is one. NPR, public radio, is another. They raise a lot of money to have no paywall content. PBS. I'm getting the sense there are a lot of local publishers that are doing it, and we can talk about why they might be having more success. But certainly, like you edit something called the Banter. Substack newsletter has a very long history. Was a blog before that, and you have a paid subscription product. And correct me if I'm wrong, like one of your biggest subscription days was like right after Donald Trump got elected. You're a left of center publication, and you put out like this like very good essay saying help us keep Donald Trump accountable and his followers accountable. So I mean, do you think that I think like a lot of people signed up and pay for the Banter because they support its ideology, they support its mission. Do you not agree?
Yeah, I do agree with that. But I think that for example, if you're in these things for the long haul, and over the years, these things chop and change, right? So then when Trump is no longer, Trump leaves office, our subscriptions start to trail off, right?
Mhm.
So then, what then is your strategy? What then do you base your? You can't. I don't think you can base your. It was a one-off. So I didn't even. I had no idea that that piece was going to take off in the way that it did, and B result in so many subscriptions. I had no idea that that was going to happen, but it did. But it's not a long-term strategy for us. The long-term strategy is to have, we have a mission-driven outlet. I mean, that's what the Banter is. We
Mhm.
have we're appealing to left of center, informed, uh, progressive, smart readership who believe in what we do. Um, but also, yeah, I mean, we don't just write about that. We have other pieces we put out on the Banter. We have personal essays, um, and we have done that for years. And
Well, well, certainly, like there are other conservative boogeymen other than Donald Trump. Like obviously, with the Republicans passing all these anti-choice laws right now, all this mess over critical race theory. Like there's still, I think there's a lot of anxiety in left of center America about conservative politicians and their effects. That you could continue to position yourself as someone that is kind of pushing back against this. I did a big profile of Judd Legume, who is another Substacker, left of center. He decided to do away with this paywall completely in 2020. He said that he saw no hit to his subscriber numbers, and even after Donald Trump left office, he has continued to see some of his biggest growth months. So like he he's focused on just things like other parts of conservative politics and kind of doing investigative journalism that, and he hasn't seen any kind of hit. And he said that he's seen some really good growth. So I wonder if you underestimate, in terms of positioning, like one of the downsides to locking stuff behind your paywall is that you're kind of limiting your growth of your free list. So there's a trade off either way. So if 100% of your content was free, then yeah, maybe you could get the conversion rate is lower, but because you're reaching a much larger audience, it all evens out in the end. I don't know. What do you think? Is there any traction in what I'm saying right now?
yeah, and I think a lot of some of that can depend on your reach as well. Um, and for mid-sized publishers, I think when you're talking about people like Judd Legume is not part of the publisher middle class, as you've written about so well. But the Substack middle class, Judd Legume is not part of that. He's part
Yeah.
of he's part of the 1%, or whatever top 5% of Substack publishers who are bringing in serious revenue, but they all have gigantic social reach,
Hmm.
almost like a sort of a cult following. Um, and I think in those circumstances, yeah, it's easier for them to um, not have a model that's more, what would be the word, um, you know, business kind of I mean, I don't know if business oriented is the right word, but like, I made that decision to we have a paywall, right? If
Hmm.
you can read part of the essay for free, and if you like what you're reading and you think it's good, then you subscribe, try, or at least try it out. We're offering we
Hmm.
offer free trials, right? So it's almost like no risk really. So you can have 3 months free or however long the free trial is. Read the piece, and then if you like what we do, then you can continue subscribing. But we don't have that type of cult following that, say, a Judd Legume does, right? And
Hmm.
I think, and that's the reality for most publishers. Most people who make money from publishing are not superstars, and that's fine, and that's okay, and like I've accepted this for a long time ago. I accepted this. I'm not a superstar publisher. I'm not I'm never going to have a cult following, and that's okay. I'm building, but I love what I do. I want to build a sustainable business out of that, and the sustainable business for me, that's how we're going to do it. We're going to have a paywall. You can have free samples. You can try it out. You can have a deep discount, that kind of thing. But that's our source of revenue. We don't make money from ads because we're on Substack, um, and I'm not going to. I think maybe we could. It could be completely mission driven, but it's not something that I'm willing to risk myself.
Hmm. So let's say like you are a publisher listening to this and you have been thinking about, do I have a paywall? How much do I put behind it? And you want to kind of maybe not try it without a paywall. How do you think the messaging shifts in terms of like convincing people to become paying subscribers if there's not a paywall? Like it seems like you really have to lean into the mission driven part, or the, what I'm doing is important, you are helping, like the only way I can keep doing this is is by you actually paying to subscribe. And you guys do a little bit of that anyway, regardless of the fact that you have a paywall. And I'm assuming that's effective messaging for getting people to subscribe, that a lot of people subscribe to you not because they want access to your paywall content, but they want to support you, Ben Cohen, you, Bob Seska, who is one of your co-writers. Like that's like part of the motivation, right?
Yeah, and having that balance, I think, is important. Where we do say, like, this is a mission driven business. I mean, I'm not doing this to become a millionaire. Clearly, it's not a massively lucrative business to be in, but I do it because I love it. And we do have a mission. We do have a kind of an ethos at the company. Um, so I want to make that clear, but it's also like I want to show value for, if I'm asking you to give me money, like there's got to be some reciprocal. They've got to feel like they're getting value for that. So there's extra perks. There's the content behind the paywall that they get. It's not, we do about maybe a 50-50 split, I would say. Um,
As in 50% of your content's behind the paywall.
yeah, yeah, right. And over time, I think that has proven, at least to me, to be the most sustainable strategy for us. If I was advising Judd Legume, I would say, yeah, go for it. I would say that you'll probably have a lot of success doing that because you have a kind of a cult following, and
Yeah.
um, but yeah, I think publishers always need to also need to remember that you are in a business. You're running a business, and your business is content. So the content there has to be perceived value in that content, something that you
Mhm.
actually like, that you're willing to actually pay to read something. So if you're publishing quality stuff that's used that that it's of use to people, then you should charge for it.
Yeah. I think it also matters like what kind of company you run, whether you're a for profit versus nonprofit, or a small creator versus like a huge team. My sense is, so like I don't know if you've noticed this, but like if you go to Vox.com right now, at the bottom of all their articles, like they actually are, even though this is a for profit venture capital funded company, they solicit quote unquote donations from you. You could either do a one off donation or become, I think, a recurring member. And I'm guessing that's not like, that doesn't really produce much meaning. I think BuzzFeed even does something similar. And I'm guessing this isn't like producing a lot of revenue for them because like nobody feels guilty about not, paying for helping Vox to sustain itself, especially when it's loaded with ads and everything. Versus, I get the sense that if you are a not, if you are very declare yourself as a nonprofit, or if you're just like a one person creator, the person's like, yeah, I want to support that nonprofit's cause or that individual creator. So I'm willing to pay, even though they're not even giving me any paywalled content. I mean, do you think that there's like a difference there?
Um, yes, definitely. I think like yeah, Vox. It's I find it a little bit cheeky that they ask for money for donations. It's like, wait a second, guys, you've got millions of dollars in venture funding, in big time investors. I get it. You do good work, you know,
Yeah.
but it's
Well, someone on Twitter actually suggested the other day to me that they're almost borderline scamming people by tricking them and then thinking maybe they're like a nonprofit or something like that. I wouldn't go that far, but it is kind of weird for a large media company to ask for donations.
yeah, right, exactly. I think it's weird. I think it is not. Yeah, it is a bit. It does feel like a bit of a scam because where's that money going to? Does that because ultimately, there are big investors, right? In Vox, and
Yeah.
that money goes to improving the journalism, which goes to improving their bottom line, which
Yeah.
goes towards some giant venture capital fund, right?
Yeah, like if you're donating to a creator, you're like, okay, this is like putting food on that creator's table. Whereas if you're donating to Vox or BuzzFeed or whatever, you're like, this might be just going straight to a senior vice president or a VC or whatever it is. Like this doesn't necessarily paying for journalism. You know what I mean?
Right, and why would you trust a giant corporation? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I wouldn't, personally. So I don't donate to Vox.
Yeah. I think I gave them like $3 once.
Right.
So what about like other things that are less time consuming than a paywall? Like one thing that I've been trying to experiment with is I don't know if you've seen this, but I started this kind of Q&A series where I make it available so that any of my paying subscribers can ask me a question,
Mm.
and then I will answer it in a future try to answer it in a future newsletter, and then that newsletter will be completely public and free to read, but you can only ask the questions if you're subscribers. There's the whole creating a Facebook group or a Slack group, a community. I mean, do you think that there's like alternative to paywalls, and that will be in some cases those are good enough, like a good enough differentiator to where you can keep all your content for free, but can have these kind of extra perks and stuff like that?
Yeah, I mean that kind of thing sounds like it's a really smart model, really smart idea to do that kind of stuff. You definitely you want to get as many eyeballs as you can on your content. You want as many people to read what you're doing or see what you're doing as possible. So I think having a system like that is really cool. It's really really good. If you can, if you can kind of innovate in that way, But I think when people pay for something, I mean, I guess to me, it's like it seems like a sense of fairness. It's like when I publish something, I'm like, some people are paying us money, and I feel a responsibility to those people who are keeping our publication alive. Give them something extra because that's I don't know what it has to be. Perhaps it doesn't have to be specialized content. It could be community aspect or what you're doing, which is allowing them to ask questions. I'd be curious to see how that pans out long term. Whether you see more success that way.
Yeah, I mean, I've noticed a slight uptick, but obviously my numbers are somewhat low, so it's hard to tell in the short term whether the uptick is because of this certain thing or if it's just a complete anomaly. I know you're a big fan of like the crypto space and stuff like that. We're seeing some experiments with NFTs where if you pay for the NFT, not only do you own the NFT, but it gets you special community access, like access to Discords,
Mm.
access to live events. It just seems like this is stuff that's like easy to offer without it taking up too much of your time, and while also freeing you up to publish more content in front of the paywall. and giving some kind of perceived value. And I don't know, but part of me wishes you would try it. I don't like obviously I'm rooting for the banner to succeed. I'm you're my friend. I'm rooting for you to succeed. And I wonder. I mean, it'd be like, who knows? Like, maybe I'm completely wrong, and you would lose a bunch of subscribers. But part of me is wondering, like, if you were publishing 100% of your content before in front of the paywall, could you use that mission driven stuff and maybe offer a community or something, and in exchange you would see like faster growth and stuff like that?
It's. I mean, look, you could well be right. It does work. Like it gives me anxiety thinking about that. I'm like, like what happens if we do that? So, also, thank you. I appreciate it. I appreciate you thinking about the best interest of the banter, and I'd hope that. Yeah, I'm not. I'd never say never, for sure. But look, it's 5 years ago, 4 years ago. When was the no? Hold on, 2015, right? The Ferguson. Is that the Ferguson? When all the
I think that was even further back.
or 2014 maybe, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So we at the Daily Banter. Uh,
This is when you were a blog, less
yeah,
so a newsletter.
a website, Simon, a website,
Yeah,
not
a website. I'm sorry.
a weblog. Yeah. So we crowdfunded our one of our writers, Ches Pazienza. We crowdfunded a trip for him to go to report in Ferguson during the protests. I mean, we raised the money pretty quickly, and we we raised the money afterwards. The whole thing was a complete debacle. Like, Ches called me up and said, "I think we should go. Let's see if we can get the readers to go for it." But we had to buy the ticket first. So I bought the ticket, and I was like, right, I don't know, I've got to pay the writers this month as well. So I'm hoping we can get the money back from our readers.
Yeah.
It was a complete. We had to print. We made him a fake media pass as well. We get a fake press pass, no insurance, no liability, no nothing. Um, he went to Ferguson, got pepper sprayed the first day on live television. The whole thing could have been a complete disaster, but the readers just pitched in. They drove, but that's when we had secure Facebook reach. We had a real community on Facebook, right?
Yeah.
We would put stuff out on Facebook, and we know that it would reach our audience. But right
Hmm.
now, we've got 40,000 followers on Facebook, and we put a post up, and it will reach maybe 1,000, 1,500.
Yeah.
That's what they've done to our reach, Facebook, because and the other pages that we would use sometimes. Yeah, nothing. Like, they've disintegrated our ability to connect with people who have liked our page or followed our page. So how do we getting that message out? If we had that intimate connection with our readers through social media, I would feel more confident in that.
Yeah, but now you have a even more direct connection to your readers through your email list.
Yeah, I mean, look, that is true, but I feel like the game is at least the game has changed slightly, and it makes me more nervous that we can't, promoting it is harder through social media, and yeah, I think that having then one of the becoming like NPR have these kind of like these insane like donation drives.
Yeah, but they only do it like twice a year for a
Yeah,
week.
which is great.
And then it's done, and then they don't do it ever for the rest of the year. I
Yeah,
would rather have that, than them just constantly like asking for money.
yeah. I mean, or they could just lock up some of their content and be like, right, subscribers get this. Could do that, Which is, I mean, look, right now, I mean, I'm happy with the mix that we're doing right now. Over time, that seems to have worked out reasonably well.
Hmm.
Again, it may be something that we change. I think anybody doing that, like, I would say, good luck. Like, genuinely good luck. I'd like to see how well that works over time. But I think if it worked incredibly well, you'd see a lot more people doing it.
I mean, I watch this space a little bit closer than you, obviously, because I interview all these folks and stuff like that. I am seeing more and more examples of it every day,
Okay.
where they're not locking a lot of stuff behind paywalls. A lot of it's happening in the local news space where
Yeah.
it's part of that mission driven thing. Like, local news is dying. We're supporting this community. We live in this community. You need to support us, and they're seeing a lot of success there. But even on like Substack, Patreon, you're seeing like them get, basically they'll offer. It's not that they don't offer no perks, like they'll offer them some extra stuff, but it's not like they're not spending 20 hours a week working on stuff that like goes behind their paywall. Like it's very kind of minimal type of stuff. So I think maybe you're underestimating how much willingness there is if you can build like a really hardcore fan base that loves you, that opens every single newsletter you listen to, you create, or listens to every podcast you do, their willingness to support you. But either way, I'm kind of, starting to lean towards experimenting with this. I've started doing it within the last month, pulling stuff, pushing more stuff in front of my paywall, launching this Q&A series, different stuff like that. So I'll tell you what, if 6 months from now, if I tell you it's a huge success for me, you definitely have a personal case study you can copy from to try to do it yourself.
Yeah, I mean, good, certainly good luck to you. I mean, I think that because the stuff that you publish is so valuable, at least from my perspective, yeah, it seems that having a paywall would be the best way of going about it. But I'm happy to be proven wrong. To be proved wrong, I'm very more than obviously if it's successful. Likewise, I want you to succeed. Like
Yeah,
you run a top quality um, publication. And
yeah,
a lot of serious people read what you write. Um, you have valuable knowledge. So
yeah,
I hope you're right. I really do.
yeah. All right. Well, thanks, man. Well, thanks for joining me, Ben. Where can people find you?
We're on Substack. We're at the banter .substack.com. That's we and on Twitter. It's at the Daily Banter. That's my personal Twitter handle.
Awesome. Well, this is a lot of fun. Thanks for joining me.
Thank you very much, Simon.